Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 685. 685. Wednesday, February the 6th, 2019. Of course, being Wednesday, it'll be time to take out the trash and have some pasta. Every Wednesday, it's trash and pasta. Alrighty, tonight I'm going to talk mostly about the Trump State of the Union speech. But before I do, let me go ahead and just hit a few breaking news items and I'll jump right to that. Okay, let's see. Well, it appears that the rich are leaving New York and California in droves. New York lost $2.3 billion in revenues in 2018. $2.3 billion. That's a lot, even in New York. New Jersey had a 35% drop in revenues. New Jersey, almost as high a taxed state as New York. In fact, they're getting ready to introduce a rain tax. That's right, a rain tax. They're saying that if rain falls on pavement, which could mean your driveway or a parking lot, then that runoff goes to the sewers, and of course all that runoff has to be cleaned and filtered, and that costs all this money, so therefore they can justify the rain tax. That's why people are leaving New Jersey. Where are they going? They are headed to Florida, Texas, Arizona, and Nevada. And they just got a governor out in California. Well, California has lost, let's see, do I have the numbers on Cali? I don't have the exact numbers on Cali, but I think it's somewhere in the 138,000 people left California in 2018. 138,000. It's a big state, but relatively speaking, that's still a lot of people to leave because they can't afford the housing, can't afford the taxes, and they don't like that far left-wing governor they just got, and give this guy about 2 or 3 years and see what condition things are in. I'd say that he might get 500,000 to 1 million people to leave California ASAP. This guy's bad news. Gavin Newsom. He's going to destroy what's left of Cali if they let him. Remember, I predicted before the election he would win, but I also said he might get recalled. Okay, so that's what's going on. Let's see, we had a RGB sighting. That's right, Ruth Buzzy Ginsburg was apparently sighted Monday night at a concert in, I think, New York. They got no pictures, there's no photographs, there's nothing to prove that, but apparently there's a reporter who's like an entertainment reporter who saw her and said she was sitting a couple rows behind him. So could be, or it could be a body double. Could be. Do you think Ruth Buzzy Ginsburg has a body double? Anything's possible. Let's see. Boom. Paul Sperry has fingered BuzzFeed's deep throat informant. Okay. I think there's too many sexual terms in that sentence. What do you think? Paul Sperry has fingered BuzzFeed's deep throat informant. This video could probably be banned, but hopefully it won't be, and we'll get through the night. But it appears that Paul Sperry has fingered BuzzFeed's deep throat informant. Okay, we're talking about this story that Trump told Michael Cohen to lie about the details of that Trump Tower that they were going to put in Moscow. Of course, that turned out to be a lie. So it appears that this guy, this informant, is the one who gave BuzzFeed the lie that Trump ordered Michael Cohen to lie. We now know who this person is, and it's a name we've all heard before. Felix Sater. Felix Sater, that's right. Felix Sater, we all know about him. He's a dirtball. He was a career criminal, white-collar type criminal, deep stater type individual with connections to all the cronies. That's right, all the cronies. A crony, close friend of the Clintons, Mr. Weissman, Mr. Mueller, Loretta Lynch. He, of course, was cited in the dossier as Source E. Source E was Mr. Sater, and he's the one who provided, apparently, the PP Gate story. That's why this journalist over in the UK got the PP-Gate story from someone within the Clinton inner circle, which we assume is Shearer or Blumenthal. That's why. Because everyone's connected to the rotten Reverend Clinton. You just take and put the names on a piece of paper and take a pencil and a ruler, and you will always find everyone connects back to the rotten Reverend Clinton, including Mr. Sater. So he was a crook. He got busted, and then he turned into an informant, is basically what we know about Mr. Sater. And he's a close confidant of a lot of the people who were involved in a lot of the shenanigans for the rotten Reverend Clinton. So he's the guy that told BuzzFeed that Trump told Cohen to lie. And Cohen is also a close associate of Mr. Sater. It was those two that were working on the Trump Tower deal, trying to use their connections, both of them. You had Cohen trying to get something for nothing off the back of Trump, and you had Mr. Sater trying to do the same with his people on his end. Just a couple of hacks using some high-powered people to try to, butter their own bread, so to speak. And, people like that can be easily bought, as we're finding out with Mr. Cohen, and as we, of course, knew about Mr. Sater, who's a close friend, by the way, of the rotten Reverend Clinton. During some FBI investigations, after he turned to an informant, Uncle Bob the Executioner, along with his good friend, hopefully the soon-to-be indicted criminal, Mr. Weissman, they used Mr. Sater and of course we know Loretta Lynch was involved in some hanky-panky in that situation as well. These people all come from the same group there, the Southern District of New York, the Eastern District of New York. They all know each other. Comey, you can throw in that group. McCabe, Strzok, these people all come from this little group. They all know each other. They all work together. They all cover each other's asses for the crimes that they commit. And now we know who the deep throat was for BuzzFeed, Mr. Sater. Source E in the dossier. Gave the he was responsible for the PP-Gate story, likely cooked up at the table of the rotten Reverend Clinton while she's sitting around drinking wine and getting sloshed with Podesta and Blumenthal and her friends. Come up with this crazy idea. Probably cooked up the Trump Tower idea right there at her kitchen table after a couple bottles of whatever she drinks. And they cooked all this stuff up in her kitchen. Gave a phone call or a message to their good friend Mr. Sussman, their lawyer, who then translated the message over to Glenn Simpson, and they put it all together for the rotten Reverend. People will do anything for money. Absolutely anything, especially scumballs like these folks over at Fusion GPS and Perkins Coie, who should all be arrested. Particularly Mr. Simpson. He's now been caught red-handed lying, goodness gracious, to Congress, 5, 6 lies that we know of? We haven't seen the whole transcript. Okay. Next, Rinat Akhmetov. It has just come to light that Rinat Akhmetov, again a close associate of the rotten Reverend Clinton, who was also in the Trump Tower meeting, who was simultaneously working for Confusion GPS at the time, who had a little train ride and had dinner with one of the Clintons' very best friends on the afternoon of the Tower meeting. He was there, supposedly as a translator, even though there was already 2 other individuals there that could have translated, including one, a sign translator. We now know that Rinat Akhmetov received $500,000 in suspicious payments before and after the Trump Tower meetings. I'll say that again. Rinat Akhmetov received $500,000 in suspicious payments before and after the Trump Tower meetings. It's all coming together. Another piece of the puzzle falls into place, and it fits perfectly. And it implicates the rotten Reverend. Well, it appears that oh, you're going to like this one. David Duke has endorsed Tulsi Gabbard. That's right, David Duke has endorsed Tulsi Gabbard, apparently because of her anti-Israel views. Alrighty then. I'm sure that'll work out for you very well. Let's see here. Finally, we have Roger Stone telling the Judiciary Committee that they need to investigate Mr. Josh Campbell. He's the reporter that showed up from CNN at Stone's house an hour before the raid. He was also, prior to joining CNN, a special assistant to James Comey, the dishonorable former director of the Federal Bureau of I'm With Her. James Comey's special assistant goes to work for CNN, and then he gets tipped off an hour before the raid on Stone. What do you think? So Stone says that Congress should investigate this guy and bring him in and put him under oath. Under oath. And ask him if he and the CNN News organization received a prior tip, and it appears they did. It appears the header on the email with all the metadata shows that the CNN reporter got that notice from, it appears, Mr. Weissman the night before the indictment was unsealed. That's a crime. It's a crime on Mr. Weissman's part, and it's a crime on the reporter, knowing that they took an unsealed indictment and released that information before the indictment was unsealed. So the CNN reporter actually sent it to Stone's lawyer. So these people are not only corrupt, they're stupid. That reporter obviously didn't know that this lawyer can read metadata and understand it. And he looked at the metadata on the email and said, wait a minute, this is a direct email from somebody. It appears, looks at the initials, looks like Andrew Weissman, AAM or AAW, and which is his three initials. And he would have had access, obviously. And so he's able to look at the metadata and see that this clearly came from probably Weissman to the CNN reporter. And she just forwarded it to Stone's lawyer. Hey, did you guys know about that you're getting indicted? Oh, yeah, let me look at that metadata and see where you found out. Oh, you found out from Weissman. Oh, and you found out the day before the indictment was unsealed. Well, I think that's a crime. I think it's a crime. So, yeah, they definitely ought to be looking into that and a lot of other things. Alrighty. Let's get right to these, my analysis of the State of the Union. Alrighty, if I can make it through this. That drink went down the wrong pipe, but I'll be fine. Okay, let's see. Well, I've seen a lot of State of the Unions. Mostly they're pretty damn boring, and I usually can't last through them because they're usually kind of long. But I have to say that this is certainly one of the best State of the Unions I've ever seen. It was absolutely fantastic for a lot of reasons. I remember Reagan giving a couple of good State of the Unions. I just disliked Clinton so much I could hardly ever watch one of his or Obama's State of the Unions. I don't think I watched any Obama State of the Unions, maybe clips, but never sat through a full one. George W., I may have watched one or two of his, certainly the one after 9/11 I'm sure I watched, but nothing memorable about any W speeches. Certainly his father was even worse. I mean, George Herbert Walker Bush. In fact, I think it was during the State of the Union that he made the pledge not to raise taxes. Oh no, he made, no, I think he made the pledge not to raise taxes when he was running, and it was in the State of the Union that he announced that they were going to do the $500 billion tax increase that he agreed to with the Democrats, and I think that was announced during the State of the Union, and that sunk him for re-election, by the way. So, there's not a lot of memorable State of the Unions, I guess, in recent history, because, at least for me, because most of the participants bore me to death. So, anyway, Reagan's were always fairly entertaining, and of course you had that same sort of friction with the Democrats, very partisan, who controlled both houses of Congress, had overwhelming majorities in the House, pretty solid majorities in the Senate for 6 of the 8 years he was president. And but Reagan was very good at throwing in barbs, but doing it in a very sort of classy way. I mean, or whatever. But what Trump did tonight that made his speech so great is he nailed every damn point. But he took the issues personally, but he didn't point the finger personally at anyone like Pelosi. He didn't attack her or Schumer personally. He didn't attack Democrats specifically. Didn't call them out or anything. He really did not do that. And he in a lot of ways, he did several things that forced Democrats to have to applaud him when you know that they had been ordered not to. And as I go through this speech, now what I did is I'm watching the speech, I'm just jotting down notes as I go through the speech. So what I'm going to do, and these are just things I scribbled real quick, so I'm going to kind of read my scribble and then think about exactly what I was thinking when I scribbled. So this may be a little rough, but I'm sure it'll be fairly entertaining. And we'll kind of go through the speech, but it was a really great speech. I think it's one of the best I've seen. I haven't had time to watch any of the reviews because the speech just ended. Literally the speech ended and I set up my video. So I have no idea what anyone else thinks of the speech. I've seen no other commentary, but I'm thinking it's going to get very high marks. So probably the high point in the evening was probably the part where this group of resistance Democrats led by Ocasio, Marty Feldman, Cortez, Eyes, this little group that she, protest group that she put together, which was, I think, bound and determined not to smile, laugh, clap, stand, or do anything. They were there to resist. But so what happens is it gets about two-thirds of the way through the speech, and he makes a comment that forces them to all go crazy and stand up and start clapping and cheering and smiling, and Ocasio-Cortez and the whole group, and then they actually break into a USA chant. This was probably the highlight, funny moment. This is the rolling off their chair laughing moment for me. I was literally on the floor. I was curled up in a ball. I was laughing so hard I was crying. That's how freaking funny this was. So we'll get through all this. So let's start at the very beginning. So I noticed right off the bat, as soon as the cameras were panning through the crowd, just as even before Trump came out there for a second, you saw him, but then I saw him better as the speech went on, and I didn't know what I was looking at first, but of course we figured it out as it went on. So anyway, and even Trump commented on it, so that made it even funnier. So anyway, I'm looking out there and I see this whole group sitting about 10 rows back on the Democrat side, which would be the right side if you're looking at your TV, and I noticed that there's about 25 or 30 of these people, Democrats, dressed in white. Some of them had the exact matching outfit on, but they all were wearing white. And there was a few peppered over into the center of the as well. So you had just like 35 or 40 of these Democrats, almost all women, I should say. Almost all women Democrats, many of them freshman Democrats, and I believe that their leader was Ocasio-Cortez. I believe that she had directed them not to smile, laugh, clap, stand, cheer, nothing. They were just going to be total, sit there in white and just be a grimace through the entire speech until that moment happened. And after that, they actually clapped and stood and smiled and acted normally for pretty much the rest of the night, with the exception of the part where he got to the immigration issue, and then they were like really freaked out. And when he called out socialism, that definitely that hit him like a ton of bricks as well. So anyway, I'm looking out there and I'm seeing these people in white. I'm like, who are these people in white? And then I notice Ocasio-Cortez, and I go, oh, okay. And I notice that she's like a little busybody and talking and chatting. Okay, I guess giving instructions for what they're all supposed to do. So anyway, it was funny. Ocasio-Cortez had a little resistance group going. Okay, so then they all got the sour faces, and you can tell they're like, you can tell their game faces on, man. They're just going to be total resistance, right? Okay, so let's see. Yeah, Trump did quite a few times during this State of the Union. He purposely, as I said earlier, as opposed to really being in attack mode and being really kind of, what you see, the Twitter Trump you didn't see tonight. You saw a different Trump. And what he did is he very masterfully put together lines that forced Democrats into one of two positions. Either you clap and show support of this, or you're going to look awfully bad. You're going to look completely un-American. You know what I mean? He used these lines, and one of those lines was, he said that we have to govern here, me and you, the Congress, all together. We have to govern as two, not as two parties, but as one nation. And so it was these types of lines that he kept throwing out there. It forced, even Madame Botox was even forced as hard as she was trying not to, it forced her on several occasions to have to at least grimace and clap. And even some Democrats forced him to stand and clap. Because it's pretty obvious that if you watch Pelosi throughout the speech, she had already given the marching orders. No clapping, no standing, no cheering, nothing. We're just going to be really resistance. And so Trump said things in such a way that you literally could not. You had to stand and cheer and clap because they were like patriotic themes and common sense things that you can't be seen going, because people think, what, she's not for that, So he really put the Democrats in a tough bind. He didn't give them the Trump that they wanted. He gave them another Trump. And he just destroyed that room tonight of Democrats. Destroyed them. And we'll get more into that in a moment. So Nancy, at various points during the speech, was so irritated and agitated by what she was hearing, all the good news about the economy and trade and jobs and all this kind of stuff. I mean, all this kind of stuff, and it's just killing her. She starts picking up the prepared speech, which she obviously has a typed copy of the prepared speech in front of her. She picks it up and starts reading ahead, and she spent a lot of that time tonight with reading that speech with that grimace on her face, just grinding on her jaws. She'll have to have surgery tomorrow from all the grinding on her jaws. And so anyway, it was just funny as hell looking at the contrast between Pence, who sat there almost the entire time like that. This is the look he had on his face all night. Whereas Pelosi was like grimacing, tightening her mouth, doing that thing she does where she's like reading. I mean, you could see she was extremely uncomfortable, which made me very happy. Then there was at one point where Trump said something that was somewhat I forget what it was exactly what he said, but Pelosi actually leaned forward, and I think it was when he was talking about how they have to come together or work together, or whatever. Nancy actually leaned forward and clapped right as close to his head as she could and looked at him. And that was funny. And then she sat back down and said something to Pence, and then looked back over, and she had just this real like she had just made a real sarcastic comment. And then, let's see, I noticed that Willard Romney was sitting here. Rand Paul was sitting next to him, and Ted Cruz sitting next to him. So Cruz with Rand Paul sitting in between Mitwit and Ted Cruz. That was pretty interesting. Doesn't surprise me so much with Rand Paul and Cruz because they're pretty good friends. But Mitt sitting right next to him, and he was stone faced most of the time when you saw him as well. Then Trump started talking about all the good news. And as they panned, of course, you could see Pelosi's face, you could see the Democrats' faces. They were almost like sad, depressed, as Trump was talking about 5 million people being lifted off of food stamps. Trump's like, 5 million people have been lifted off of food stamps. And Pelosi's like, because all the things he's saying, people are watching, and these are facts that people can look up and find out, wow, he's telling the truth. So people across the country who watch CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, NBC, PBS, all these others, they have no idea about any of this. This is the first time they're hearing it. And they might be thinking, oh, I bet Trump's lying. They can Google any of it and find out it's all true. And so Pelosi and the rest know this. They know what a massive success he's been on the economy and other things. So Nancy actually goes from sad to then looking angry as he continues to talk about his economic success. She actually starts at some point, I don't know how many of you saw this, she starts whispering to herself. You can tell she's talking under her breath to herself. And I thought at some point, she's nuts. And she probably is a little bit nuts. I mean, she's not mentally what she, used to be. He started talking about unemployment, and Nancy refused to clap or stand when he started talking about his great unemployment numbers. She looked like she was in extreme pain, and she still continued making these little smirks and comments to herself, like talking to herself, saying things. You can see her lips moving. She was, saying some words to herself. He was just driving her nuts. And then what blew my mind, one part of the speech, he's talking about the healthcare situation, and he said, yes, and we got rid of the individual mandate. Now, I expected every Republican to be standing and clapping, but they had a shot of the whole gallery, and you could see, and there was a good number of Democrats that were standing and clapping on the individual mandate line. Shocked me. Now, the whole time, throughout the speech, you could see that Nancy Pelosi was trying to keep the sourpuss face and, trying not to laugh, clap, smile, or anything like that, certainly stand or anything like that. She was trying, but Trump even got to her and forced her at some point to stand and laugh and clap and whatever, because he just gave a damn great speech, that was entertaining in a lot of ways. He had fun with the fact that they have this beef between one another. He didn't do it in a nasty, mean way. He addressed it, but he did it in an entertaining way that made a lot of people laugh. Because everyone's aware of the situation. It's not like, everyone knows there's not a lot of love lost between Trump and all these people out there on the dim side. So, anyway, of course, we noticed that crazy woman, Kristen Sinema. He even got her up and clapping a couple times, and you couldn't miss it because she was wearing like a fluorescent pink dress. She looked like an 80s pop star. I mean, the woman dresses look crazy. But he got her up and clapping several times. But yeah, it was funny watching Nancy as she was looking throughout the gallery. She kept looking like she was checking to see which Democrats were standing and clapping. It's like she was taking note in her mind. Uh-oh. There's that one, that one, that one. She's like she was keeping track of who was clapping or cheering Trump. She wanted to know. At one point, they put the camera on Joe Manchin, and he was literally had a huge grin on his face. He was laughing and clapping as hard as he could. And it's at the point of the speech where Trump was talking about us becoming the biggest exporter of oil and gas. And Joe Manchin was loving that. Of course, we saw the CIA director there. Oh, yes, we saw the CIA director, and she had kind of a crazy kind of stone look on her face. I'm not sure what to make of that. I never saw her smile at any time. Gina Haspel. Keep in mind, she was the head of U.S. intelligence stationed in the UK in 2016 when all the stuff was going down. She knows about it all. Probably was a participant. Okay, so then at one point, Trump starts talking about how we have to move forward, move the country forward, do what's good for the country, and he called out the partisan political investigations. He said they must stop. We shouldn't, and that's kind of bummed me out. That means he's not going to go after the Rotten Reverend and the Spygate people. He wants the partisan political investigations to stop. But then I thought, well, what he's talking about going after him wasn't what people going after him, it is a partisan political investigation, but going after the actual criminals who actually committed real crimes would not be the same thing. So once I worked that out in my mind, I was okay. But when he said those words, we need to stop these political partisan investigations, the camera flashed right on Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff, the bug-eyed fool, and his face turned red as a beet. He was so embarrassed. He was so freaking embarrassed. Because people around him were like, yeah, that Adam Schiff guy. That's who he's talking about. Everyone knew exactly who he was talking about. And they put the camera right on Schiff. It was hilarious. And then I'm looking up in the gallery there, and you can see Kushner and Ivanka. And every time you see Kushner, it's like, the guy, and Ivanka too. I don't know about you guys, but Jared and Ivanka, they're like the Stepford people or something. They're so... what it is they look like perfect. They're so perfect. You get the feeling there's no flaws. They're both just like... they're perfect or something. They're like... I don't know. They're like different beings or something. They're like... you can't... It's just something about Jared and Ivanka. They look... I don't know what it is. I don't dislike them or anything. It's just... I don't know. There's something about Jared and Ivanka. They're just very... I don't know. I can't put my finger on it, but they look like the Stepford people or something. I don't know, almost like wax figures. Well, the Democrats weren't liking very much when Trump was talking about immigration. He got some serious long faces from the Democrats there, and a few under the breath grimaces and groans. But they got through it, and he nailed it. All his points on immigration, he just absolutely nailed it. I think he moved the ball way down the field. He set himself up perfectly after the case he made tonight. If he can't get the Dems to go along with physical border security, I think he can easily do it some other way and have a lot more public support than he would have, because again, most people have been getting nothing but propaganda. They haven't been getting the truth and the facts, and he laid it out there and he nailed it. He absolutely nailed it. No sane, rational, reasonable person looking at the case he made can deny that we need something on the border, physical structure of some sort, to stop the madness and the crimes. And at one point he's talking about the immigration issue, and he includes at the end of the statement, he's like, including a lot of politicians in this room who have who live behind gates, walls, and guards. And then the camera flashed on Nancy Pelosi, and the look on her face was priceless, man. It was just priceless. Because she's thinking, oh, like me, the walls and gates and personal security, Pelosi just had that look, and the look on her face was like, damn, he got me there. He got me there. Shit, It was great. So we got Ocasio-Cortez leading in this protest, and they've been doing pretty good at some point, but then Trump starts talking about how well women have done under this economy, and he says that women were the ones who were the beneficiaries of 53% of the new jobs created in his great economy. And that's when the white folks, the Ocasio-Cortez protest folks, totally broke out of character. They shot to their feet, they started clapping and dancing, and then they actually broke into a USA chant. And from that point on, through the rest of the night, you actually saw them stand and clap a few times and smile, and they looked normal again. But for the first half, man, they were totally in character. They were on their game, and then Trump just blew them out, man. And then he said 2 or 3 other things about how well women have done, and they continued standing and laughing. And then once they finally sat down and the audience died down, because everybody was laughing, because everybody saw what was going on, it was really funny, because everyone knew they were there to resist and protest and whatever. And Trump really just blew them out, took them out of their game totally, made them laugh, have fun, start dancing. And at which point Trump says, let's see, what did he say? Oh yeah, hey, you weren't supposed to do that. So everybody knew exactly what was going on, and they weren't supposed to stand up and cheer for him or whatever. There's another point where the flash the camera on Kristen Gillibrand. It's when he was talking about ICE, and he looked out at the audience and he said, let's see, I will never end ICE. I will never end ICE. And at that point, it flashes right on Kristen Gillibrand, and he's just made this incredible case, and she knows that she's on record saying she wanted to end ICE. And she's thinking in her mind, you can just see the look on her face. She's like, she's working it all out in her head. She's like, oh shit, I'm going to be on the debate stage with Trump. He's going to just kill me on this point. He is going to just shred me on this point. I am done. That is what was going through her mind, man, I'm telling you. Yeah, it was just hilarious. Of course, Melania was there. She was looking spectacular as usual. Of course, everyone tomorrow will talk about the dress she wore and blah, 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 and how her hair was done. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how she's dressed or how her hair is done. She could be wearing a burlap sack and she'd look good. For goodness sake. Of course, Nancy, still out there looking in the crowd at all the Dems who are now clapping on a fairly regular basis, including all the people dressed in white. Of course, he hit the abortion issue. That just literally drove Pelosi insane when he started talking about the post-birth abortion and called it murder, straight up. Pelosi was just literally oh man, you could just see it was painful. She was just in pain. Then he went into talking about, this was great. He went into talking about Venezuela, and he actually said, we have socialists out here, we do have them, and he just pointed out that socialism has destroyed Venezuela. And just as he says, about socialism, we'll never have socialism in America, then he does a hard look right at Ocasio-Cortez and her group of white dresses or whatever. And he stares them down like, yeah, we're never going to... That was great.